Your dog is about to lie down. They approach the spot in the dog bed, the couch cushion, the patch of carpet. They stop. They begin to turn. 1 rotation, sometimes 2. Sometimes 4, 5, 6 in tight, deliberate loops. Before they finally drop. You've probably laughed at it. Maybe filmed it. Maybe wondered briefly why an animal that lives in a climate-controlled house still performs what looks like a prehistoric loading screen. Most people land on the same answer. It's instinct, leftover behavior from when dogs lived outside. That answer is technically true. It's also almost completely useless. It tells you nothing about what's actually happening. A set of intersecting behavioral, neurological, and evolutionary mechanisms that researchers are still actively untangling. When you understand what's actually running in your dog's brain during those rotations, the ritual starts to look less like a quirk, and more like a very old piece of engineering that hasn't needed updating in thousands of years. Start with the environment the behavior was built for. Wild canids don't sleep in beds. They sleep in grass, in undergrowth, in whatever dense vegetation offers cover. Before lying down in that environment, the animal faces a set of problems that need solving simultaneously. The ground may be uneven. There may be insects or small animals or stones underneath a surface layer of grass. The temperature differential between the top and bottom of the vegetation matters. The orientation of the animal once it's down, which direction it's facing, where its back is exposed, has real consequences. Circling compresses and flattens the sleeping surface. It checks the ground. It clears debris. Research on wild canids suggests it also functions as a form of scent marking, if the paws contain glands that deposit scent. The circling leaves a faint territorial signal on the sleeping site. This is claim territory briefly in chemical language. Dr. Stanley Coren, a behavioral psychologist who has spent decades studying canine cognition, described the circling behavior as a remnant of nest building. The dog constructing a functional sleeping site from whatever materials the environment provides. The behavior was selected for over millennia because animals that circled slept better, stayed warmer, and avoided more hazards than animals that didn't. That selection pressure is gone. The behavior is not. There's a second mechanism operating underneath the nesting behavior. Wild canids, like many animals, don't just sleep in any orientation once they've circled. They align. Field observations of wolves and feral dogs have noted a consistent tendency to position the body in relation to wind direction. To curl with the wind at their back and their nose tucked toward their tail. This minimizes heat loss from the most thermally vulnerable parts of the body, the nose, the ears, the abdomen. A 2006 study published in the journal Learning and Motivation examined how quickly dogs settled when allowed to circle versus when they were physically prevented from completing the behavior. Dogs that were allowed to circle fully settled and remained still significantly faster than dogs that were interrupted mid-circle. The researchers interpreted this as evidence that the circling isn't purely reflexive repetition. It ends when the animal reaches a functional threshold, a subjective sense of readiness. The circling isn't just preparation. It appears to be a self-regulating settling protocol. It runs until the dog decides the conditions are met. Here's the detail that surprises most people. The number of circles isn't random, but it isn't fixed either. The variation between individual dogs is partially heritable. Dogs bred for outdoor working roles in variable terrain, herding dogs, hunting dogs, livestock guardian breeds, tend to show more elaborate pre-sleep rituals than dogs bred for indoor companionship roles. The behavior was functional for longer in working lines and appears to have been maintained more robustly as a result. A separate line of research adds something else. Anxious dogs circle more. The behavior has a secondary function that becomes more prominent when the animal is in a state of elevated arousal. The physical act of circling. The proprioceptive feedback of the turning movement appears to function as a mild self-soothing mechanism. The rhythmic compression of the paws against the surface. It reduces arousal. It prepares the nervous system for rest in a way that simply lying down immediately does not. The circling is in part its own form of winding down. Most circling is exactly what it appears to be, a normal behavioral ritual with deep evolutionary roots and no veterinary significance whatsoever. But there's a distinction worth knowing because the behavior can sometimes signal something that needs attention. Compulsive circling. Circling that continues beyond what's needed to settle. Circling that happens not just before sleep, but throughout the day. Circling that seems driven rather than purposeful, can be associated with neurological conditions, cognitive dysfunction in older dogs, or vestibular disease. The behavioral marker that separates ritual from compulsion is completion. Normal circling ends. The dog reaches its threshold and lies down. Compulsive circling doesn't resolve into rest. It continues or resumes immediately or escalates rather than settling. A 2012 study in the journal PLOS One examining repetitive and compulsive behaviors in dogs found that tail chasing and circling, when they appeared as compulsive patterns, were significantly more common in specific breeds, particularly bull terriers, were associated with measurable differences in brain chemistry rather than behavioral history. Context matters here. Your dog doing 4 loops before settling into a nap is not a compulsive pattern. A dog that circles persistently and can't settle, especially in a senior animal, is worth a veterinary conversation. So here's what's actually happening when your dog circles before lying down. It is running a behavioral subroutine so old it predates the domestic dog entirely. A sequence inherited from wild ancestors that slept in grass and needed to solve a genuine set of physical problems before rest was safe or comfortable. The behavior was selected for because it worked. And because it worked, it became part of what dogs are. The number of circles isn't theater, it's a threshold being reached. A subjective signal generated by the behavior itself that says conditions are acceptable. The nervous system can now slow down. When your dog circles on a memory foam orthopedic bed in a heated apartment on the 4th floor of a building, it isn't confused about its environment. It isn't failing to update its behavioral firmware. It is doing what it was built to do in the only way it knows how to do it, with the body it was given and the instincts that came with it. The grass isn't there anymore. The wolves are gone. The predators aren't coming. But the ritual runs anyway, ancient, automatic, and in its own way, quietly perfect. Subscribe if you want to keep understanding the behavior your dog can't explain to you. Drop a comment below. How many circles does your dog do? And next time, we're getting into something completely different. A golden retriever approaching a familiar spot with practiced confidence. The bed as claimed territory. The couch cushion alternative. The patch of carpet that looks identical to every other patch of carpet. The wolf's equivalent of a 5-star hotel, dense grass, protected from wind, insulated from cold. Paw glands making their invisible contribution. The proprioceptive feedback loop completing with each step. The same behavior in a wolf, a feral dog, and a golden retriever, identical. Thousands of years of selection, one surviving loop. A husky performing the ritual on a winter morning. A border collie circling with characteristic intensity. A small terrier doing 3 efficient circles. The dog bed as modern substitute for ancient grass. Wild grass at night, the original sleeping surface. The paws remembering what the mind has forgotten. The breed determines the intensity. The anxious dog seeking calm through movement. The nervous system running its pre-sleep protocol. Checking the ground one last time. The elliptical sleeping hollow forms. A body-shaped hollow. Ancient architecture. The final rotation. The weight shifting. The sound of 4 paws pressing into soft fabric. The ritual that predates every dog breed ever created. An owner watching with familiar amusement. The dog that circles twice and the dog that circles 10 times, both completely normal. The carpet versus the bed, why dogs sometimes prefer the floor. Scent checking the sleeping site, the flattening behavior across species. From nest-building birds to circling dogs. The dog in the wild, sleeping under stars. The dog in the modern world, sleeping under a ceiling. The same biological instructions, different address. The brain chemistry of settling, cortisol dropping. The parasympathetic nervous system taking over. The scent of the sleeping site building up over time. Why familiar spots feel right, the worn in bed, comfort amplified. 3 circles to the left, always 3, always left. Individual variation within a universal behavior. The golden retriever and retriever instinct encoded in every movement. Research findings from field observation of wolf packs. The genetic thread connecting the dog on your floor to the wolf in the forest. 15,000 years of coevolution. The behavior unchanged across the entire span. The dog that trusts its body. The behavior completing on its own timeline. A Labrador approaching the sleeping site. The pause before the first rotation. And then, the first step. Proprioception, the body sensing itself in space. The feedback telling the brain where the body is. Pressure, release, the rhythm of settling. The dog that settles quickly has received what it needed. The dog that needs 7 circles has a higher threshold. Neither is wrong. Both are normal. The tails roll in the circle at counterbalance. Eyes scanning the surface during rotation. The nose reading the surface chemistry. Everything checked, everything acceptable. The controlled descent, front legs first, then the back end follows. The final position, curled, aligned, settled. A soft exhalation, the body letting go. The owner who finally understands what they've been watching. The research citation, Learning and Motivation, 2006. The research citation, Pilos 1, 2012, Compulsive Behaviors. The dog breed chart, working breeds showing highest circling intensity. The wolf pack bedding down for the night. The domestic dog pack, family pet settling for the night. The same ancient rhythm in a modern home. Why scientists find this behavior fascinating. The behavior that launched dozens of studies. Field work, observing wolves in the wild. Lab work, measuring settling times. The control group, dogs not allowed to circle. The experimental group, dogs allowed to circle freely. Results, the free circlers settled significantly faster. The implication, this is a behavioral need, not a decoration. Respecting the ritual. The wisdom of not interrupting. Thousands of years of refinement in 3 rotations. The bed as the dog's territory, claimed, scent marked, familiar. What your dog is actually doing right now, and why it means exactly what it should. The instinct that survived everything, the behavior that needs no update. Ancient engineering, modern dog, perfect fit, the science behind the ordinary. Something you've seen 100 times, explained for the first time. The bond deepened by understanding. The next time your dog circles, you'll know. You'll see the wolf in the living room. You'll see the grass that isn't there. You'll see an animal doing exactly what it was built to do. The ritual runs, the dog settles, the day ends. Ancient, automatic, quietly perfect. Subscribe to keep decoding the science behind your dog's strangest habits. Drop a comment below. How many circles does your dog do? And next time, something completely different. The sleeping dog on the final image. The living room is the new wilderness. The dog bed is the last remaining wilderness ritual. From wolf to dog, the same loop, endlessly. Your dog is not confused. It is ancient. It doesn't need to know why. It just knows. And now, so do you. The science of the ordinary, made visible. What looks ordinary? What is extraordinary? Your dog, the last wolf.